Okay. Okay. I went ahead and recorded, so we've got about a minute left. Did you see Dr. Hamilton's email to us?
No, I didn't.
Okay, I'll say something about it then.
Okay.
I just want to make sure. Just
Well, we are on 7 o'clock.
okay, let me go ahead and okay. Okay, Dr. Revis, we can go ahead and get started.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome back from Gardner Webb's spring break. I hope you had a good spring break from Gardner Webb, but I know that many of you are having spring break in your school district either this week, next week, or as in the case of Heather, she's got 17 more days to go. So, I hope you have a good spring break when you get to that point. I was telling Dr. Stedman we're at our lake place. It's a very secluded small lake place, and my lights are flickering. So I hope everything stays up and going. Let's talk first about the final comments on the APSL, and then we are going to put that baby to rest. Dr. Stedman, everybody in my class scored a 4.
Well, guess what, Dr. Revis? Everybody in my class scored a 4.
Guys, you may think, oh, well, we've never had that happen. I have never had it happen.
No?
And so, kudos to your hard work and your diligence and your perseverance, and you've got the APSL behind you at this point. So, we're done with the APSL, okay?
Dr. Revis, I'll have to say this on my end. That old bald-headed white man that keeps calling aggravating them, it paid off.
It
It
did.
paid
It
off.
did.
So all those emails that I sent, all that stuff, it paid off. And guess what? We're not going to stop. We're going to do the same thing with the AAPTEL because we want the same results. So we're not going to stop. You're stuck with us.
I want to make a few comments on your case study that you did. Um, I shared with everybody a couple times on our class meetings that we wanted to hear you back up your ideas and your thoughts on the case study with either research and outside readings that you had done either for class or those that were in the course for assigned readings or even some research that you did. Or we wanted to hear the language of the APSO. Now, I will tell you this. If I did not hear you give an author reference to an author, or if I did not hear you say something like, well, we should have, James should have done a PLC like we did in the APSL. And from that PLC, they should have done some research just verbally referring to the work that we did, then you did, I marked you down. You didn't get a full credit. Um, and it's very important moving forward when we have case studies that you back up your opinions with research or with the work that we're doing in class. And if you don't take anything else away from this class, I want you to take this away. When you begin a project in your school, I don't care how big or small, you need to stop and take time to look at the current state of your data, whatever data set you decide to use and to look at, then do research, make an action plan, and monitor it. If you don't do those steps, nothing will change for you. Many, many times we go to conferences, we come back, and we heard somebody's doing some schools doing something that's just fabulous. And we just jump to buy it and jump to implement it without even researching that program or researching the demographics of that school where it was so successful. Guys, it's not about programs. It's about the people. It's about your people and getting them on board and getting them focused and you monitoring them and monitoring the work of the adults. That's what makes the difference for children. So, what about your APSL case study, Dr. Stedman?
And everything that you said, I did. I'm not going to repeat all of that, but that's the same thing now. Even though we had a cursory eye on that and attentive ears to the language, we may have been even a little more flexible with that than we will be for the APTEL because you will have lessons learned. And so everything that we do with the APTEL, Dr. Revis, we're gonna we're we will have higher expectations for that because of the lessons you should have learned over the last 8 weeks. With what you have been doing with the APSL, but but overall, I would say good job, but very pleased with our APSL scores. So that's the icing on the cake tonight. Dr. Revis, your analogy was good. Doing the research and going. No, I don't know that anybody that would go to a car lot and buy a brand new car without doing your research on the car and making sure that that it met all of your needs. You're going to look for one maybe with the best gas mileage, the one, you're going to look at all of that stuff. And so, the same thing goes with, more so with what you're doing, impacting the lives of children and teachers, is you do your research. You can't ever go wrong, or rarely can you go wrong if you do the right kind of research ahead of time. So, okay. So I think we can put it all to rest for the APSL, Dr. Revis. And
I
we
do too.
and we move on. And with that, you can see this is what this evening is going to look like. We're going to go back to APTEL Task 1. We're going to talk about Qualtrics, which is involved in the work you've got to do for Task 1 and Task 2. And then we're going to go into APTEL Task 2. So tonight, everything is really going to be about the APTEL. Before I move on, though, Dr. Hamilton is not with us tonight. She did say that she had sent out, she's made comments on everybody's work. She said to check your emails, to check your comment section. She said some people have not edited work and sent it back to her. And she said some people have not submitted their internship log at all. All I'm going to say is Dr. Hamilton's handling that, but Dr. Revis, that is unacceptable at this point. You're grown, you know what's expected of you, and I expect when I talk with Dr. Hamilton in the next few days, I expect my students, and I feel sure Dr. Revis does hers as well, I expect you to have taken care of this, and we'll move on from that, okay? That was one of those mom and daddy things that we were saying to you. Let me stop the share on this, and then I want to pull up, Dr. Revis, but I want to start with this before we even go over anything. Remember, with the APTEL, you're going to be much more independent. We're backing off. We're still going to be there, but we're backing off somewhat because we really need to see what you can do at this point a lot on your own. But this is under your APTEL resources and materials section. This is what you need to look at this and look at what the evaluators, we look at this, but this is what your evaluator is going to look at to be able to get it accomplished. Now, I will tell you, I have history kind of lets me know, Dr. Revis, that while they do a good job grading the APSL, they seem to be a little stricter on the APTEL when it goes in. So, Don't back off. Don't take anything for granted. Don't think that I can get by with this. I want you to look at the language. This is just for task one only. You are to develop, and I want you to look at this word that they have underlined and boldface. Develop an extensive literature review with bibliography that is thoroughly aligned with the best practices areas identified in the prompt. Now, we told you last week that you had to do a minimum of three. Now, if those three are the best thing since sliced bread, then I think you'll be okay. But if even those three, if they're weak, Dr. Revis, they're going to look at that and they're going to say, the literature review was weak. And I've had them to say that before. The literature review was weak. It didn't seem to be extensive enough to support the research, what you were doing. So just make sure, and I want you to notice this connecting word, this conjunction. Not only you got to do the and, what we're going to talk about in a few minutes, the checklist is effectively and thoroughly designed as an instrument to aid in observing the research best practices, etc. Now, there should be no problem with this. For the most part, we're giving you what you need to do. But I'm just telling you, this is how differently it's going to be as you are working with the AAPTEL and when you submit your work for a final evaluation. Now, we're going to look at it along the way. And if we don't think it's extensive, we're going to let you know. I'm going to say, you probably won't get a 4 on that. Now, it could be consistent and you would be proficient, which is a 3. And that's not bad, but it's not a 4. It's not accomplished. So we can get you here comfortably, but you've got to want to get here. So, make sure that you do what you need to do. Pull this up, look at everything for all 4 tasks of the AAPTEL, and we'll come back and visit this again next week, but look at what it's going to take on your part to be able to get accomplished with your work. Now, as we said last week, you do not get a completed AAPTEL to follow this time. You can go back and look at your APSL. Your APSL is going to be the same format, but you do get some help in the helpful hints document. You use the template again, but I want you to notice after each section, we give you some research already that's there that you can model by. But Dr. Revis, let's go back over the AAPTEL task 1 and make sure that everybody, because I'm sure some of them have not bothered it since we talked about it, but we need to make sure that they're on board with what must be completed this week.
Okay, so in task 1, what you're doing is you are looking at research on those 5 different areas. I'm sorry, Dr. Stedman, I may have.
That's okay. And if I need to pick up, I can move on.
So the first one is building efficacy and empowerment among staff. You need to have at least 3 sources, distinctly different sources. And one here that I am going to look for and that Dr. Stedman will look for and that your evaluators will look for is Bandura, Albert Bandura. That's one of your must-haves. Some other authors you might want to look at, Todd Whitaker and Hattie, Hattie, has done some work on building efficacy and empowerment among staff.
Another good name, Dr. Revis, is Ingersoll. Ingersoll is another Ingersoll. That's another good name.
Now you don't have to have all those other names.
No.
You got to have Bandura in there because his work is the seminal work when we talk about self-efficacy.
Gibson and Dembo, as they've got right here, Gibson and Dembo are excellent to work with. I will tell y'all real fast. When I did my dissertation, my research was uh, on teacher efficacy and the impact it has on middle grade students, student achievement. So Gibson, I actually talked personally with Sherry Gibson on the phone out from California to get permission to use her survey instrument. So
Cool. You may ask, how much do I write? Well, I would think you would need at least 3 well-developed paragraphs, but you can write more,
right.
and you can have more than 3 different sources.
Don't shortchange yourself on this assignment. Okay. Okay.
All right, then your next heading is results-oriented professional development. Again, 3 references. Your must-have reference, Linda Darling Hammond, Hammond, and that's right there in that second sentence, Hammond et al., 2008. She did a lot of the similar research on results-oriented professional development. There are other authors too,
Right. And
but that one needs to be there.
And just remember, again, this is what the research says for all 5. We said this a couple of weeks ago. It's not what you think, it's what the research has to say. You're looking at what the research says, and what we're going to tell you in task 2 is going to make sense with the research that you're doing. Number 3, your heading is recruitment, placement, and mentoring of school staff. Remember, the whole focus with the AAPTEL, everything always has an impact on student achievement, but this is not about the students, it's about the teachers. We're looking at teacher empowerment inside that classroom, and we're looking at teacher empowerment and leadership outside that classroom. What does it look like inside the classroom, or what should it look like according to the research? And inside and outside that classroom. So when you're doing this, recruitment, placements, and mentoring of school staff. Now that's 3 things that you've got to look at: recruitment, placement, and mentoring of school staff. What does the research say as a principle? What does the research say that those best practices are in recruiting good teachers, placing them strategically, with grade levels or in certain subject areas, and then making sure that you are growing them where they are, and that means mentoring your school staff. And remember what we said 2 weeks ago: it's a teacher's job to teach children. It's a principal's job to teach and work with teachers. So as an aspiring administrator, your job is not to teach children. Your job is to make sure that the teachers can do everything that they can do to make sure that children are being taught and that it's being done the way it should be done. So that's what that research should look like. Notice they used your textbook, and all. Okay, the 4th area, your heading is approaches to for evaluation of school staff. And again, Dr. Revis pointed this out last time. We're not looking at necessarily regurgitation of the evaluation instrument. We're looking at what does research say about what are the best approaches for effectively evaluating school staff. That's one way to do it. Your summative evaluation, where usually there's one big one and then there's 2 small ones during the year, those kinds of things. But then what are you doing on a daily basis? This goes back to your walkthroughs. What does research have to say about walkthroughs? What does it have to say? Sometimes they're called instructional rounds, like doctors going around in the hospital. There's all kinds of terminology for that. And then there's other things along the way. Approaches to or for evaluation of school. It's monitoring with fidelity the things that the instructional things that are happening in the school. Again, what does the research say? Dr. Revis, is there a certain person that they need? Marzano.
Right.
Marzano's involved
Marshmallows
in that,
key.
and that goes back to Marzano's nine. You know, and we'll refer to those again in just a few minutes. But again, you're going to tie this together into what you're going to do in task 2 after the research is done. Dr. Revis?
And then your last heading is teacher leadership and decision making. And so here, what we want to see again is the research, at least 3 authors, one of which needs to be Todd Whitaker. One of which needs to be Todd Whitaker. And there are other researchers in there that play a big role in teacher leadership and decision making. But again, it's what the research says. And you would put that down there.
And again, this is just reiterating what we've said, a minimum of 3 references. But if to make it strong, if you need 4 or you need 5, then by all means do what you need to do to make sure that that you have your work as accomplished as possible. But you're going to have a minimum of 15 for these 5 areas. And we've listed again some of the key ones to look at. A
And
reminder,
don't overlook number 7.
yes.
You've got to remember your APA formatting style when you are writing narratively and do your in-text citations correctly and also save those for your reference list.
Okay. Now let's go to any questions about the research before we move on. Any questions? Everybody clear?
And I'm hoping that many of you took advantage of last week and did some really good research. I know several of mine did because I kept getting questions from some of you, which is great. But I hope you're not waiting until now to do your research. You're gonna have to really pour it on to get it done by Sunday evening.
Okay. And last week we introduced prompt 2 of task 1, or week before last, and we said that while it tells you to do this, we have made this part somewhat easier for you because we are going to provide you with a checklist if you don't have a walkthrough instrument. Now, if you have a walkthrough instrument already and it's reliable and validated by your school district, then by all means, we're not asking you to change something, that's working, in your school and in your district. But we'll need to see that. But the survey that we're going to remind you of, there is a non-negotiable. This survey will be used by every student in our 601 class. So you must use this survey. You don't add to, you don't take away. You use the survey as it is, and you can't go wrong with this. And basically what we're doing, as you'll see in Dr. Lamb's video in just a little bit, we're basically introducing you to what Gardner-Webb's expectations are for using surveys in this program. So with that in mind, Dr. Revis, this is the survey that we're going to give them. And we're going to go over Qualtrics after we get through with this, but this is the survey that you have to use. Notice that it comes from Whitaker. There are 5 statements, and these are some of the basic statements. If you're in North Carolina, these are some of the same basic statements that you find in the teacher working conditions survey. In South Carolina, I think it's embedded in a state instrument that they use. Some of these same things, I don't think you use the teacher working conditions survey, but it's the same thing in something that South Carolina does. But you've seen these, all of you have seen similar statements or these same statements here before. I want you to notice the format. Do not change it. It should be in this order. And notice it only has 2 columns. It has a no and a yes column. The no comes first, the yes comes second, and Dr.
Lamb.
Lamb explained that the reason for that is when you submit this to get your results, that Qualtrics, as we will talk about, this is the format that Qualtrics requires, that the no column must precede the yes column. So make sure that you do that. So what you see right here is basically going to be, you're just going to take from this, and when you do your set up Qualtrics and you do your Qualtrics survey, you're going to take this instrument and you're going to put it in there for question 1, question 2, question 3, question 4, question 5. This is what you're going to use. Okay.
And let me just say this, don't just put this survey there. You've got to introduce it narratively.
Right. Okay. Notice what they said here. The following survey from Whitaker, 2011, see figure 1, will be utilized in task 2 of the AAPTEL. And it's okay. You personalize it to your school, but it's okay to follow this same format. We don't care. Okay. And remember your format for doing figures. Now, Dr. Evans, if you'll talk about the checklist that they've got to do, and then we'll go into Qualtrics.
Okay, so the checklist, remember if it's a checklist, that's the walkthrough is what we're talking about. So if you have a walkthrough checklist that you use at your school or that your district requires you to use, that's the one that you should use. The helpful hints document says that you can go and use the teacher working conditions survey. Don't do that. It just makes it more difficult for you. Just either use your walkthrough at your school, and if you don't have a walkthrough, then you use the walkthrough that's shown here in figure 2.
And again, you introduce this. You just like this. If you use this, it's Marzano's high yield strategies checklist. You introduce that. If it's yours, you've got to explain that the following checklist is what my school district uses and has approved. And when you do that, that automatically makes it valid and reliable because your school district has approved for it to be used. Now, if you go out there and you find something on your own, then that doesn't make it valid and reliable. You can't do that at this time, okay? It's got to be either what your district or your school, if your school has one that has been approved and it's used consistently, then that's what you can use. If you've got one and it has sat on a shelf and nobody's used it, then you don't use it, you use this. Okay? And here it is.
And so you see figure 2, and it is just a checklist that you will use when you go to do a walkthrough for 3 to 5 teachers. You look and see in that snapshot whether you see these high yield strategies taking place. It's a yes or a no. And you would do one of these for each of your teachers that you do a walkthrough on. But for the purposes of task 2, you'll summarize the results. But this is the checklist, the individual checklist that you would use if you don't have your own.
And again, notice we go with no first and yes. Secondly, Dr. Lamb even recommended that with the checklist that we're consistent with that because you may input this data somewhere to interpret your results. You could do that to come up with graphs and charts or whatever based on what it looks like in your school. So we followed the same format with that. Okay.
Now, in task 1, all you're doing is identifying task 1, prompt 2, all you're doing is identifying that survey and checklist. You do not do anything with it. And that is what is due Sunday evening at 6 p.m.
Okay. Now, you remember, you cannot use SurveyMonkey. You cannot use any other type of, you can only use Qualtrics, which I'm going to stop sharing. And we didn't create this. We're using exactly what you have in your Blackboard shell. You've got this same information there, but we're going to go over something with you just to bring clarity. I think Della, you've already done this. Somebody in your class that's at the same school with Della, I cannot remember her name. Della and
Markia.
okay, Della. While Dr. Evans is pulling it up, who is your coworker at your school?
Mankia.
Mankia, Della and Mankia. Uh, tell us how this went. You've already gotten this approved, and others may have as well. But tell them while Dr. Evans is pulling this up about the process that you and Mankia followed.
We watched the video with Dr. Lamb, and then together, like during our like planning period, we used exactly the survey questions from the AAPTEL, and we entered it into Qualtrics, and then we sent it to him. And that Monday, when I sent you the message, he had approved it. And then on the back end, we talked to our administrator and we said to him, hey, we got to do this for the AAPTEL. We're also going to be doing walkthroughs. He said, I okay that. I'm fine with that. And then we just set everything up and we waited. And in the meantime, when we were waiting, we just did our walkthroughs and stuff because our spring break is next week.
Right.
We wanted all of this stuff done because we knew we had to do task 2 coming up.
Well, kudos to both you and Mankia, and I'm sure there are others that I don't know about, but I know about the two of you. You just made a valid point, Della, that we need to point out. You don't do any walkthroughs in your school without your principal's permission. They need to know what you're doing and permission to do it. And if they can walk with you, or if you've got an instructional coach that can walk with you, then by all means, invite them to be a part of that walkthrough experience. It really supports you in what you're doing when one of them are with you. And the same thing with the survey. You never send a survey out in your school without your principal's knowledge of it and their permission to move forward with it. Okay. And that really should be in your narrative work when you're talking about this, that you shared this with your administration, they gave you permission to move forward, blah, blah, blah. You talk about that. Okay. Thank you, Della.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. And this video is in our week 8 classroom session, and you need to fast forward to about 56 minutes, I think is where we're going to key it up. And so I'm going to start it, and we will stop it periodically and discuss things as we go.
This stuff off my screen. So when you sign in to Web Connect, in the same menu where it says Launchpad right here, where you find email and Blackboard, you can move your favorites up to the top. But if you'll scroll down this list, you'll see Qualtrics first-time users. You'll click on that link and establish your account. Gardner Webb's already paid for it for you. Then you'll go in where it says sign in, just like mine. Hopefully it'll work tonight, and it'll make you sign in using your username and password a second time. And we're in. Welcome to XM. All right, we're in Qualtrics. Now, what Qualtrics is, it's a survey database data analytics program. It does all of them. We can create surveys, but the beauty is we can also collect the data inside of Qualtrics in the survey, and we can do analytics inside of that. It's a one-stop shop. And it does us some handy dandy graphs and all kinds of things. And we can validate our surveys as well in it. So we do not use any, let me be very clear on this. We only use Qualtrics with our surveys, period. We don't use Google Doc or SurveyMonkey or any of that stuff. We only use Qualtrics. And you're going to do a survey this semester for teacher empowerment. It will be Todd Whitaker's five levels of teacher empowerment. But now it's very simple. You will build it and you will send it to me. I will publish it, copy it, and send it back where you can distribute it. It's pretty simple.
Now, let me stop it right there. You do not collaborate with Dr. Lamb. You collaborate with Dr. Stone. And Dr. Stedman, can you put Dr. Stone's email in the chat box while we
I
finish
will.
this? Thank you.
Simple. It's just 5 questions. The idea is to get you to where you can do that. So the hashtag's up here on the top left next to XM. That's where your menu is. It's going to look like this. I've got plenty of them. Alicia, teacher empowerment survey. It's simply going to have 5 questions on it like this: no and yes. Teacher has input on professional development offerings at the school. Teacher plays a role. It's simply going to look like that. These are the 5. It's got to have your name in it. Otherwise, it defaults to everybody else's. So when you go in to build your survey, and I'll go back here. I'll go back to home. So welcome to XM. Down here at the bottom left, it says create a new project. So the first thing that you'll do, you want to create a survey. You can do it. Get started over here on the right. All right, untitled project. First thing you do is type your name in. And then you write in teacher empowerment or AAPTEL survey.
I would suggest writing your name and teacher empowerment survey because you want to make sure when it comes up after you publish it or send it to your the teachers at your school, it comes up with your name and it says they're not going to know what AAPTEL is.
Create project. And it's going to, all right, we're in the sandbox to build a survey now. And so what I'm going to do is I know that I'm going to ask 5 questions. They're going to be multiple choice with 2 choices. So I'm going to reduce the choices right here from 3 over here to 2. And I don't want them top to bottom. I want them left to right. And trust me, you want them left to right. You want them horizontal, not vertical. So I'll go down to the alignment and simply change it to horizontal. I want the first choice to be no. Say, well, Dale, why don't you put yes first? Because the first one on the left is 0. This counts 0, and we count the score up. So this is going to be no. And my second choice is going to be yes. Now you say, but now you got 3. It thinks it's smarter than I am, so I just have to take it out. It's AI enabled, and so it tries to tell you what you ought to do. And so that's what it's going to look like. And I'm just going to click to write the question now. Before I do that, I would be smart simply to copy that one, and then that one I'll copy it, and then that one I'll copy it, and then that one I'll copy it. Now I've got 5, and they're numbered correctly, and all I got to do is copy and paste that empowerment survey right here on this, and then simply collaborate it over to Dell, and I'm good to go. So what you would do then is you would go to your Word document. This is what I was talking about earlier. You build these surveys on a Word document. You go to your Word document, and I'll go to one here. Let me go back here. I'll go back to Dr. Stedman's shell. I'll go to AAPTEL template. All right, so I'm simply going to do that. I'm going to turn that black right quick. And I'm going to do this. I'm going to take the numbering off of it because I don't want it double numbered. That will ghost onto that. I simply do that. Just do a copy. Control V. Again, it'll ghost you sometimes. Just got to pay attention to that it sometimes ghosts you from the paper that you were on. Anything that's hidden or been formatted, it will ghost right on to your paper. So just check it. And then you just keep going down the line till you get, you just copy and paste all 5 of them in there. Now, I've got a publish button right here. It won't let you publish. So what you'll have to do is just simply hit this, the hashtags when you get it done, and come back to projects, and it will be right there. You'll just have one, and you come to these 3 little dots over here to the far right, and you hit collaborate, and you send it to me. I am D. Lamb. Save, and it will send it to me, and I'll get a ding in my email, and I'll go in, publish it. There, you heard the ding in my email, and I'll send it back to you, and then you can just, when you get it back, it'll be just like that. You just hit this, and you hit the distribute button, and it will it'll give you a link to email to people to distribute. Get a single reusable link right there. And there it is, copy survey link, and you can email it to anybody you want to. And it will be a validated survey. And then when we get it back, we can run analytics right here, data analysis and results out of the same place where we collected it. It's easy peasy.
Dr. Lamb, as a reminder.
Okay, so any questions on what to do? You're just going to have to do the video and pause it and do your work and come back to it. It's not that difficult. But remember, what you are doing is you are collaborating to Dr. Stone. Collaborating to Dr. Stone. You can't publish. He looks at it, reviews it, and then he'll publish and send it back to you, and then you can distribute.
Now, again, we've made it with the AAPTEL, we've simplified the Qualtrics process. But now, as you move through this program, it will become much more sophisticated, as you're doing work beyond this. We're basically guiding you in this process. There will come a time that more than likely you will be on your own with some things, but you will follow the same process. Okay?
Okay, so let me pick on Nicole Baldwin. Nicole, do you do Qualtrics? Do you have to do the Qualtrics piece, what we just showed, for task 1?
No.
No. All you're doing for task 1 is your research on those 5 pieces, identifying your checklist, and identifying your survey. You don't put it in and start doing your survey until you get to task 2. But if you're at that point, go ahead and do it. Okay?
Okay. Now,
Okay.
Amanda?
I have a question.
go ahead.
I sent in my survey and got the link back, and I sent it out, but the link, some of the people couldn't open it, so I did the scan bar. Is that going to be okay? Because the data is showing that it's coming through.
I have no idea.
You know what? I'm going to just say if it works, then use it.
Yeah. So when they
If
clicked
that
on the
works,
link,
you're going to get your same
they-
results, right?
yeah, they click
Okay.
on the link. I wasn't getting any of the
Okay.
data, but if they scan the QR code, it went instantly in.
Okay, well then that worked for you. Della, did you send yours out yet? Have y'all sent yours out yet? You and
We sent ours out.
And we've been
have you
getting
gotten
that.
some results back?
Yes.
Okay, Monica, Monkia,
Yes.
then that's good. If y'all have gotten, then it works. It may have just been a glitch in what you were doing, Amanda, but if that works for you and you're getting the same results, then go for it. Okay. Okay. Makia, while you're on there, any advice? Della has spoken. Any advice as they're doing this that you can think of?
I would just follow what Dr. Rivers said. We literally watched the video, pause and work, watch the video, pause and work. It just made sense to do it that way, and we didn't have any issues.
Okay, great. Thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Okay. Everybody, do you understand Jaquetta?
How many teachers do we need to send this out to?
As many as you can. You need as you get your best results when you can send it out, because everybody's not going to respond back. So I would send it out to all of my teachers, and so that I could get a good population, from the ones that do send back.
And we are sending out the questions that you guys have already created.
Those five,
correct?
yeah.
Okay. And then the other thing I had a question about, the walkthroughs. Are those just any walkthroughs that we decide to walk through on, or is it specific to what we talked about in our AAPTEL, or?
No, it's when we go over, your principal should be involved in where they want you to go. Your instructional coach, your assistant principal, there should be some guidance in where you go. Now, one of the things that I would recommend that all of you think about doing, get out of your comfort zones. Don't camp out with people that you know real well. Go into uncharted territories and see what you see. Because as a principal, you've got to begin looking at things that you're not familiar with. So, do that 3 to 5, enough that you can get some good interpretive results from that. Okay. Okay. So again, before we get to go over task 2, only task 1 is due this week. You're doing the research. You're going to in task 2, you're going to show us the instrument that you're going to use. It's either going to be the one from your school that your school uses, or it's going to be the one that we've given you to use. It's going to be one or the other. Everybody's going to have the same survey. But now, make sure that you professionally, that you've talked about it, why it's valid, why it's reliable, this and that and the other. You talk about that. Make sure that your work is professionally done and those surveys are put in there. They look professional. It's something that you could submit and be proud of, not just haphazardly put in there and it looks unprofessional, because if it does, we're not going to accept it. Okay.
Jamie, you have a question?
Yeah, so I just wanted to clarify on part 2, prompt 2 of task 1. So we're not truly doing anything other than putting those 2 pieces in there and just explaining them.
That's all
correct?
you're doing. That's all you're doing.
Okay.
For task 1.
What you're doing, Jamie,
right.
Actually, for task 1, you're getting approval from us that you can use this in task 2.
Okay.
You're just showing us what you want to use when you get to task 2. Okay. Okay. So everybody clear, what is due this coming Sunday is task 1 only. It doesn't go to your peers anymore. It only goes to Dr. Revis or it goes to me. However, it does not exempt you from, Monkia and Della work at the same school. So, if they want to Monkia wants to look at Della's work and Della wants to look at Monkia's work and to give feedback on, by all means do that. Or Heather may have somebody in her group that she's feels close to that say, well, do you mind looking at this before I submit it, and vice versa. It's okay to do that, but you don't have to do the peer reviews this time. Okay.
Janique?
Hi, good evening.
Hi.
On the calendar, it says that we gotta submit it to the discussion board. We don't have to submit it to the discussion board. We just submit it directly to you, correct?
You submit it to, you're not submitting it to your peers. You're only going to submit it to Dr. Revis for instructor review, or my students are going to send it to me for instructor review.
Junique, I believe that discussion board just sends it to each of us, okay?
Okay, yes.
Well, no, that it doesn't do that because when I did that, it didn't work out well for me. So I just wanted clarity that it's not going on the discussion board.
Oh,
It's going straight to the
yes,
grade link where you submit your assignments.
right, yes. Yes, it's only going to go to Dr. Revis this time.
Any other questions about task 1?
Okay, now you need to go ahead and get your Qualtrics account done, and get that taken care of. You need to think about what your spring break's going to look like. You've got to figure this out, and you've got to make it work. Like those that have already spoken, and Dr. Revis have talked to many students as well. They're making it work. Everybody's got to make it work based on what your schedules look like, because it's still got to be done. Okay. So with that in mind, I'm going to share my screen again. And what we're going to do, because people are going to be at different places, we felt like that it was important that we go ahead and share with you what task 2 looks like because of spring break coming up. Now, what you're going to find in task 2, you're going to say, well, I've seen that already, and you will have. Remember, in task 1, those 5 areas, it's what the research says. It's saying that this is what it should look like in Jaquetta's school, what it should look like in Janique's school, according to what the research says. Okay, not what you think, what the research says. When you get to task 2, you're actually going to implement. You're going to implement your survey. You're going to do your walkthroughs. And then everything that you do is going to be based on the research says this in task 1. But guess what? When I did my walkthroughs, when I did my survey, when I do my interviews that we're going to talk about, when I, based on what those kinds of things, guess what? This is what actually it looks like in my school. The research says this, but this is what it looks like in my school. Now, Jaquetta, when you do what you do, in some areas, it may be that what you see aligns with what the research says. In some areas it may, but you're going to inevitably, every one of you are going to find areas where it doesn't align. You're going to find weaknesses. You're going to find gaps. That's the whole purpose of what you're doing. Again, in task 1, this is what the research says. But when I do, where the rubber hits the road and I go in those classrooms and I got my survey, this is actually what it looks like at my school. So that's what you're going to be doing in task 2. Dr. Revis, look at here.
Okay, so
Look at those 5 headings. Start, Dr. Revis. Have you seen these before, Dr. Revis?
yes, they're in task 1, and they also show up again in task 2. So, not to get real confused, you're not just redoing them, but you are a little bit. In the first paragraph of each of these headings, you're just going to summarize some of the most important information that you are pulling from that research you did in task 1. So, this person starts out by saying, based on the research in task 1 of the AAPTEL, Whitaker found these best practices, and they name them. And so you just give a little bit of review or overview of the research. However, in the second paragraph, that's where you compare. This is where you're doing a gap analysis. When comparing empowerment opportunities to data collected using the survey of best practices, this is talking about your survey, there are several gaps between classroom practices observed at the school and what research says best practices. So they go on and they talk about some of the results of that survey. So you first talk about your survey results in task 1. I really don't think you're going to talk about your walkthroughs in task 1. I think mostly it's going to be your survey data.
Right.
Because, and you look down here, you're reporting percentages. Survey results indicate that our staff feels that they have input on professional development, and 35% indicated they play a role in the hiring process. You are reporting your actual percentages from the survey. Again, just to reiterate, in each of these sections. First paragraph, you're pulling some important information from the research you did in task 1, not new research, what you did in task 1. In the second paragraph, you're reporting your results from your survey, and you're identifying gaps from here's what's going on in my school. Is that a gap to what the research says should be going on? So the writing that you're going to do in task 2, you're going to be writing some reporting technical information about percentages of teachers who said yes or no or whatever to their survey. So if you follow on down in the example here, or helpful
Okay.
hints
I'm going
document,
down. Okay, there.
there we go. All of that is on the first heading, which is building efficacy and empowerment. And you're going to end it with identifying, is this a gap here? Now, don't sugarcoat it, guys. There's got to be a gap. There got to be some gaps. Your school may do a good job with mentoring new teachers, but your school may not do a really good job, as reported by your teachers, of giving them input on the budget process or giving them input on professional development offerings. So you want to report it very accurately, and it's okay. You need to identify a gap in each one of these 5 areas, whatever that gap is. Is that correct, Dr. Stedman?
Yes. It is. I think that's without question. You'll find the gaps.
Yes. And so then you scroll down the
Dr.
example.
Revis, I wanted to point out something. When writing, remember the APA, the survey results revealed 82%. Notice that. But now look, they started out. You wouldn't use the number here, 82%. You have to write it out. But the best practices is that you try not to do a whole lot of this. There's other ways to say it. Of the 82% of of 80
Of the teachers surveyed.
of the teachers surveyed, 82% blah blah blah, or you find other ways to say it without always starting out with writing out that number. Okay.
And so the next heading that you do is results-oriented professional development. Follows the same pattern. First paragraph, you're going to pull some research out of task 1 in that heading, summarize it. And then the second paragraph, you begin reporting the results from your survey. See, you had a survey question that just deals with professional development.
Right. And Dr.
Now, this person also
Go ahead.
found a way to incorporate some walkthrough data into this question. But predominantly in prompt 1, you're going to report survey data.
Okay, but they did find an opportunity there. And if
Right.
you
If
do,
you find an
and
opportunity,
that's okay.
yeah, and think it fits, you put it in there. Look here, as my PLC, as a team, my PLC members concurred, there is a gap. There is a gap.
So,
Okay?
and make the language clear. And you're going to do the same thing for each of those 5 headings. The recruitment, replacement, and mentoring, you're going to do the same thing. Again, the research says this, but in my school, this is what I find. These are the results. The same thing with approaches to or for evaluation of school staff. You're going to follow the same process for all 5 of these areas. And then teacher leadership and decision making. So you do the research in task 1, you actually break it down in task 2 to what it looks like in your school based on your work and the work you do with your team. Now, Dr. Evans, we didn't talk about this, but when you do your well, let's look at this. Again, in task 1, you will research the best practices for teacher empowerment and leadership in the school. In task 2, you will take these same 5 areas and analyze the gaps between what the research says from task 1 to what was actually observed in each of these areas in the school for task 2, prompt number 1. Gaps in these 5 areas are to be addressed in narrative form using APA format and referencing sources identified in the literature as applicable. Okay. Now this we'll go over this again next week, but some of you are going to be getting started on this week because of where you are.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure,
We're
Amanda.
not discussing with our PLCs at this time, right? This is just our data and our collection, correct?
I would think that in task 2 that you're beginning to share things and working with your PLC.
Mm-hmm.
And Amanda, one of the things you can do, you can actually use your PLC as a focus group. You
Okay.
want to get some dialogue with people at your school. You know, what do you see? So, you know, you could set up your questions and you could actually use them as a focus group, you know, for them to give, you know, as you ask the questions, this is what we see, you know, in this area. This is what we see in this area. Or, you know, when with walkthroughs about the walkthrough experience, there's lots of things that you can do to get qualitative interpretations back from the people that you work with.
Could we do it
I would
just with our
interview my
school?
principal. I would interview my principal, and I would say, you know, with the walkthroughs, you know, when you are walking through the school, what do walkthroughs look like at the school for you? What do you see as the biggest strength? What do you see as the biggest area that needs improvement? What have you found? So, you know, those kinds of type of interpretive data is important when you're looking at the results in prompt 2. But I would meet with my team and I would begin talking to them and using them as sounding boards and to give you some information back based on what they see. Dr. Evans, what do you think about that?
Yeah, in task two, you need to convene your PLC after you've gathered your data and you have seen the gaps. You need to let them help you identify those gaps. Here's what the research says, and in fact, you do have to make a presentation about that. Um, Here's what the research says. Here's what I found through my survey and walkthrough data, and let them help you identify the gaps.
But your presentation doesn't come yet. It's not going to come until after you
Right.
get to test three. But again, you're going to do your walkthroughs, a minimum of 3. 5 are really good if you can do them because you can get some really good results back from 5, but no less than 3. You have to have your principal's permission. And again, we don't want to see the actual results of your walkthroughs where you've gone through and you've checked. We don't need to see that. We need interpretation of that information, and you would interpret that graphically. You can write about it. You write about it, but you also interpret that graphically, and then holistically, as you look at the whole school based on what your principal says, there should be hopefully there should be some stored walkthrough data there. There should be. Again, get that information. What does it look like in your school? If there's that could be a gap, right, Dr. Revis? Walkthroughs could be a gap. Guess what? If it ain't happening, say it.
Well, I would think every school does walkthroughs this day and time. If you're not, I would suggest you highly suggest that to your administration.
But Amanda asked a question. I would ask that question in my focus group. I would say, to the teachers, what do they have to say about walkthroughs? They may say, they come by every day, because when you're reporting this out, you're going to be careful how you say it. But when you're reporting this out, if it's not happening, or if this is the perception, then that needs to become a part of the change plan to change that perception or to fix the problem if it's not happening and it should be happening. Okay. Now, again, you can't make anybody do anything. You can only show the results and hope that it will be, taken seriously and that work through. But you must. I'm going to tell you, it's important. You must have a section that you specifically talk about the walkthrough experience. It must be identified. And then, with that, now look what they've done here. They have actually, they've broken it down, and you can't hardly see this, but these are best practices and notes that were taken. This is from the walkthroughs. This is just an example of some. There's so many things that you could do.
This is like a summary of that person's walkthroughs.
Yeah, that's what they've done. Then, and this you've got that information in your this is from the helpful hints document. But look at this, your figures. These are survey results. These are actually from the survey that you're going to do. Now, you're going to show percentages. You're going to create some type of graphic information to explain things as well. And there's more than one way to show things. You talk about it, and then you show it. And all of that is done here. But you've got to, and then at the end, Dr. Revis, talk about what they've got to do at the very end.
Okay, the last section of task two, prompt two, is where you explain your gap analysis. And notice it's a summary. I can see very quickly that 24 staff members sent the survey and 17 responses were recorded. That's a rate of response. That's some good information. It helps me as the reader, and it will help your team when they look at the data to know if, the majority of your teachers took the survey results. And they go through each and every one of those areas and summarize the gap.
Okay. And again, we'll get into that next week. I'm going to stop share. The most important thing to remember, Megan, hold on just a second. The most important thing to remember in task one again, what does the research say? And you're actually getting approval for the checklist and the survey that you're doing. None of this, you're not doing any work with it in task one. You're only getting it approved. Now, the sooner you get that to us, the quicker we can give it back to you, and you can move on to task two with no problem. Okay. So that's why I hope most of you or many of you have already done a lot of the research already. And the other, it's just a matter of sitting down and putting prompt two together for task one. And then you're going to complete what your requirements for Qualtrics. You're going to get permission from Dr. Stone to send out your survey. After you've done that, you're going to create it, get permission from it, from him. And then that's when you're going to take everything that the research, you're going to actually apply it in task two. This is what the research says. But as you do your walkthroughs, as you get survey results back, as you do focus group interviews, as you interview your principal, as you interview your assistant principal, as you interview your curriculum person at the school, as you interview a random teacher, this is actually what's happening at my school. Okay, Megan?
Okay, two questions. The first one, does Qualtrics make those pie charts for us, or we have to create those?
I think you can pull them from Qualtrics.
I think
Okay.
Dr. Lamb said you could pull them from Qualtrics. Yes.
Mhm.
Okay, perfect. Second question is, so in task two, the prompt one, where we collect all our data and talk about that, those are just from those 5 survey questions. There's not any more questions. It's just those 5 survey questions, right?
Correct. And if any of your walkthrough data applies to those sections, you can put that in there too.
Okay, thank you.
Uh-huh.
Good questions, Megan. Okay. Other questions. The main thing is, does everybody know what you've got to have done by the end of this week? Is everybody clear on that? Okay. And those that are at a place that you need to move on, do you know what you've got to do? You got to finish task one, but do you know how to move on into task two? If you're one of those that need to move on because of your spring break. Any questions from anybody?
Outstanding, guys.
I'm sorry, I have a quick question. I can't find that
Qualtrics.
yes, that the link to set up the account.
Monkia, will you share your screen and show her where that is?
So when it switched over from Web Connect to the new, I can't find it. I'm only able to access the Qualtrics through the email that was sent to me from Dr. Stone. Della and I was actually trying to play around and figure out where it was earlier this week.
Dr. Revis, Dr. Lamb did say when we first started using Qualtrics that sometimes it does not show up. First time users doesn't show up. If it doesn't, move on into the other one that he said, just bypass that if you have to.
Okay, I'm looking at all these app dashboards. Can you see this, Monkia?
I can, and so that's what I was saying. When we were still using Web Connect, it was there and you can click on it. But when it switched over to this, I can't find it. Della and I played around with it earlier in the week and we couldn't find it. But from the email that was sent back to me from Dr. Stone, when I click on the link, it allows me to go in and see the data from the survey. But I
Okay.
couldn't find it here either.
Okay.
I was
We-
able to search it in the search apps and it popped up.
Okay, who was that?
Shania.
Shania. Okay, Shania, share your screen and show.
Let me stop share.
Okay. Show what you're talking about, Shania.
I know that threw me for a loop, and I knew it was coming, but that threw me for a loop Monday morning when I opened mine up and it was all crazy.
I tried searching as well, but I couldn't get it to come up.
Can you see it? Can you see my screen?
Not yet, no.
No.
Let's see.
Okay.
We can now.
And it'll come up XM.
Now, why does it come up from her and it didn't come up from me? I'm mad.
Hey, did you?
Well, if you noticed, sorry,
Go ahead, Shania.
if you noticed, it was right there in her apps. She didn't have to search for it. It shows up now, like on the second line down.
And that's what I was going to say too, Jamie. Just now when Shania pulled up her screen, it was actually down there. And when I set up my account yesterday, it pulls up. But if Shania goes back to her screen, you'll see where it says Qualtrics XM. It's there.
Okay, so just search for it, and if you can't find it, reach out to one of your Zoom mates. Seems like enough if you found it that you should be able to do it. And guys, even though you're not, again, reiterating, even though you're not working and reviewing each other's work, depend on your Zoom mates. Ask each other questions. By now, you've probably formed a really tight PLC and, shoot each other questions and give each other hints and encouragement. And I know you do that, but just continue to remember you've got some people there that in your PLC that can support you. The problem is, a lot of things that we get into, we can't see the student version of it. We only see the instructor version. So we're handicapped in a lot of things when you're asking us how to do it from your end.
So help each other out, and I think you have and you will.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions? All really good questions tonight, guys.
But again, I just want to say to all of you again, I'm very, very proud of where you are. Thank you for hanging in there with us. It's like signing up for the Army and they go to basic training, and not everybody makes it through basic training. We don't have everybody we started out with, but you're here. So thank you for sticking with us, for listening to us, and moving forward. And I think all of you should already know or see the value of what you're doing and the impact that it's going to have as you move forward in this leadership program. Tara, can I put you on the spot? Okay, unmute, Tara.
Yes.
Tara's already in a leadership role at her school.
Mm-hmm.
But Tara, already at this point, what is just briefly tell what have you learned that has helped you in your role at the school already? Because I know your eyes have been open to some things.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's a tough question. Honestly, just really through all of my roles outside of the classroom, just really seeing how everything is connected on the school level and really just looking at everything from the lens of an administrator. And that's really where I fall in. I've already do walkthroughs. I've done them for years. And, just really piecing everything together. It's just, I have a new perspective of what every administrator does every day. When I come in, I'm asking one of the APs or our principal, like, how do you know to do this? What do you know? How do you plan your day? Because I'm just really looking at it from my skewed view or, just dibbling and dabbling. But now everything is really coming together, even through doing the AAPTEL. Everything from my job and from everyone else's job is really coming together and just really getting a full picture of the day-to-day operations of the school
You made
environment.
you made a comment in one of your Zoom sessions. You said that that working with the APSL and working with that it helped you better focus on what PLCs should really be doing and what they should look like at the school.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And everything that I do now is with a little bit more fidelity, but I am intentional about everything that I do when it comes to leading meetings, my communication, and really, the documentation of everything, just to make sure that our PLCs are done with fidelity and just done correctly, to make sure that I am able to collect more accurate data heading into meetings and things of that nature.
And thank you for sharing that. And next time we're going to call on somebody else next time, and you don't know who it's going to be, so be prepared. I think Dr. Revis, did Unique have another question? Thank you, Tara.
I'm not sure. Unique, did you just need to tell me that you had to log off right quick, or you have a question?
Well, I did have a question, but
Okay.
I do have to log off. I'll ask my peers how to get there because my screen is coming up that I don't have access to the resource, the Qualtrics.
Qualtrics. Okay. All right. Reach out to somebody on your Zoom team and y'all get together and chat about that. Okay.
And then Unique, if for some reason it's not there, then let Dr. Revis know, and she can she'll let Dr. Lamb or Dr. Stone, somebody know that you've got some issues with it.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, guys.
Good night.
Good night, everybody. Good. I want some good work this week.
Me too.
Dr. Revis, do you have 1 second before we all log off? I'm sorry.
Sure.
I had